Welcome to BioIT World's Trends from the Trenches podcast, your insider's look at the science, technology, and executive trends driving the life sciences. I'm Allison Proffitt, editor of BioIT World. This episode is hosted by Stan Gloss, founder of BioTeam, a life sciences IT consulting company at the intersection of science, data, and technology. Joining Stan today is Jarrod Anderson, Senior Director of Artificial Intelligence at ADM. Together, they discuss prioritizing AI projects, selecting the best team members, and AI's role in sustainability and environmental preservation. Let's listen in.
Hey, good afternoon, Jarrod. It's so nice for you to join me on my podcast today.
Hi, Stan. Thanks for having me.
You know, we've done a lot of podcasts around the life sciences industry, but one area that we've really never explored much at all is ag bio, and the fact that you work for Archer Daniels Midland and involved in a lot of computing technology and AI. I thought it would be great for my audience to really hear a little bit about what's going on in ag bio and tech and the merger and data and AI. So I think I'm really excited to have this conversation because we really haven't had, this is one we haven't had on our podcast. So Jarrod, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at ADM.
All right. So I lead the artificial intelligence team here at the company. 4 years ago, it did not exist. They essentially had maybe one person really doing what we would call, you consider data science. So I was brought on to establish a team, build out a competency group around more of the advanced analytics space at the time, emerging technology. I've since transitioned it to saying it's under the umbrella of artificial intelligence. And that was a couple of years ago. So I've grown the team. We've got a pretty strong resource level of people, PhD level folks that we've grown. Now, what's interesting about the kind of work we do here at the company is one of the world's largest agriculture and nutrition companies. $85 billion in revenue. It's in 200 different countries. We deal with commodities, soy, wheat, corn. We do with nutrition. If you go into the grocery store and you see things like natural flavors on packages, that probably came through our company. So we work in all sorts of different areas. And Archer Daniels Midland wasn't really just one company. It's been buying companies and little pockets of companies all around the world. So they've got a tremendous amount of expertise in various areas that have to do with food, the whole spectrum of food, buying from producers, buying from farmers, transporting it, manufacturing food, creating new flavors, ingredients, beverages, and so on. Food products for animals.
Right.
And we do that too. So the footprint of the company is huge. And you can imagine the amount of data that's being produced by all these entities, all these businesses, not just internally, but externally, with all the partners and businesses that buy from us and the markets that we have to understand, the different regulatory aspects of it from the agriculture perspective that have to be looked at. It's very complicated in a sense of it's complex in many, many different levels. And it's not anything new. It's been there for years and years, building up all this, you could call it data. Now
Right.
It's not clean because it's so large. We have data that's kept in spreadsheets. We have data kept in PDF files. We have research documents. We've got publications that we've done. All sorts of regulatory items we've had to deal with. Agreements with customers and partnerships. And so you can imagine the amount of data that this company generates. Now there are advances that the company's been working on trying to bring many of these data sources together and create repositories that people can mine for information. That's ongoing. It's going to be a big thing for years. And we'll find new techniques and new ways, and new vendors will come up with new solutions that they want to introduce. Now, artificial intelligence has been something that we've been working on for a number of years now. We established the group, and we're trying to demonstrate how many of these kinds of techniques and tools that are becoming more common can be applicable to many of the problems and challenges that the company has. So my team now, we work in virtually all the different areas in the business where we found the highest problems and challenges that can be addressed by many of these techniques that we have. I'll start with just a few, like the transportation.
Well, wait a second. I want to, before we get going there, I want to kind of understand the journey you were on, because you're saying that you were here 4 years. Prior to that, everybody must have been kind of wild west, like some organizations I've seen with data. So maybe I would love to know, how did you wrangle the data, and where did you start? I mean, you got an organization with so many tentacles out there in so many different directions. How does one start to wrangle and get to data sets that are AI ready? Because you got to wrangle the data before you get to the AI.
That's right.
So tell me, can you talk us? I'm curious about the data journey to get you to the AI before we get to the AI, because for me that's 80% of the work, right?
Yeah, most of the work. Nowadays, it's really a lot of the work, or most of it. Let me back up a bit then. So prior to coming here, I was VP of Artificial Intelligence at Wells Fargo. There was a team there, and we were bringing some newer tools. Data at the financial companies is much cleaner. It's much more straightforward, low-hanging fruit. Mm-hmm. But before that, I worked at IBM for 11 years, most of which was in the Watson Group. Mm. So I started to really understand, early on, what's needed to really figure out how we can take advantage of these new tools and techniques that are, people have been experimenting with for years, but they never really had the ability to, due to lack of data, lack of compute power, lack of knowledge, lack of skill set. Many of these things resided in academia, but now we're trying to bring them into the business world. So, and even before that, I've involved with various companies, worked for various companies, a lot of banks, worked for Oracle Corporation as a product manager. I was an architect, on software development. So I've got a long journey of, witnessing, especially in large companies, how many, solutions can be brought in. Right. And then I got exposed to the whole artificial intelligence space, starting at Watson, at IBM, and then the years that I spent there working with various solutions that they were trying to develop with customers and understanding their problems. And then again with Wells Fargo, and then here at Archer Daniels Midland. So to your point, the data is the fuel of what we do. I personally believe from an AI perspective, things are changing in ways where it's no longer just a very black and white binary thing of you have to have data in order to do AI. I think there's other things that are probably coming up. Less data is needed, or an understanding that really trying to figure out the solution or the insight you're trying to generate. It could be a very light touch. So there's lots of different ways to look at it. But back to your original point here at this company, it's trying to wrangle that data. As I mentioned, data could be in various spreadsheets. It could be in other languages, just messy data. Of all the different businesses and the kinds of things that we support. Like I mentioned, we might have transportation data, we might have commodity trading information, because we do a lot of commodity trading for the company. We deal with our producers. Our producers are the farmers. What kind of plants are they growing? What kind of seeds do they need? To your point, it's I didn't even know this before I came here, but the whole seed industry is very complex. There's a lot of regulatory items around there, but there's different seeds that are used in different parts of the country. There's not like one kind of wheat. There's all sorts of different kinds of wheat, and wheat that's being, manufactured in such a way to withstand certain kinds of pesticides or temperatures in the environment or soil and whatnot. And this is around the world. It's complex. If you can spend your entire career just focused on seeds.
Well, yeah, I mean, and some of our clients who are in the ag biospace, it's not just the genomics of it all. I mean, they are now flying drones around fields and watching plants grow and looking for things. So the combination of, all types of instrument data as well as all kinds of video and streaming and other types of data. So managing all of those data types is what we see in the life sciences is challenging. But, I think what we're starting to see in the life sciences is a convergence where it's multimodal analysis now. And what we want to do is look at genetics against imaging and all these different cross references to be able to mine that for new insights. So is that like what you're seeing?
Yes. Our scientists in our laboratories who create many of the new products, recipes, ingredients that our company sells, that's the space that they're in. It's trying to make sense of the data that they're compiling to come up with, new ways of, new products or solutions or ingredients. A simple way of looking at that is that the kinds of data that we can compile isn't just within a certain spectrum of light, visual, for example. We might look at sound waves, and accumulate data that way on plants. Different frequencies of information, things we're not even, cognizant of, or from a human perspective, we can't even understand or see. But we have instrumentation that can measure these sorts of things. And from that, can we derive even more insights of how we can look at some of these, things we're looking at, the plants, for example, or seeds, or growth, or soil composition, or the weather, or, it gets very complex. So as a scientist, you can go in there and just have a ball.
Yeah, that just got me thinking. I had this thought, Jarrod, like I need to go and figure out which playlist I need to make my plants happy because of the frequencies and stuff. Like, do they like rock, or are they into classical? What are the roadies like? I don't know. It just that a funny thought came in my mind over that concept of the sound frequencies and all of that.
Yeah. I mean, just because we may not be aware of it or have not proven it scientifically doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Maybe there are things that in the natural world that we just don't understand yet. I do believe that, we're not communicating in the sense that we communicate, like even with animals, for example, or plants. And I know that we see things like, let's say the bald eagle. The ability for its sight is much, much more powerful than a human's sight. Dogs, their smell is so much more powerful than a human's, right? But we know that. Now, are there things where their sense and how they feel, is it more intense than what humans feel?
Yeah.
And we don't even know if plants have something like that. I mean, we could look at, plants are very simple organisms, relatively speaking, to an animal. That I think there may be things there we just don't understand yet. And now we're developing technologies that can hopefully measure these things, and we can derive insights and say, have those aha moments like, maybe we shouldn't be planting these kinds of seeds of plants and destroying the environment. Or how can we make things much more sustainable, which is a big initiative here in the U.S. I know around the world is more sustainable industries. But if we take that a step further, can we be more regenerative? Can we regenerate the soils that we've, destroyed over the last 100 years from various farming techniques? And if we do that, we make our, farming things more profitable, more productive, more good for the environment.
Yeah. We actually work with a company called Indigo. And what they were originally founded to do was to look at the microbiome of soil. In order, so instead of feeding fertilizer to plants, we make the soil that the plant grows in have a healthy microbiome, which then makes a healthy plant. I mean, that kind of science is something that. And then we also did some work with algae. And can algae be turned into alcohol? So that was Algenol, I believe the company was. So there is some very interesting science going on in the ag bio space.
Yeah. Even our company is involved with bioenergy, biofuels. I don't know much about it myself, but that's another space.
Right.
Are the biofuels more, I guess, if fuel additives or whatnot, is it more productive or more efficient for, I guess, combustion engines or something? But again, that's a whole other field.
Right.
So all these techniques that we have are, can we take all this data and elicit new insights from it so we can make good decisions on what we do?
Yeah.
And that's the basis of how, of this whole space. If we talk about like generative AI,
Yeah.
the big thing that everybody's talking.
Right.
I was on a call yesterday. And it's many people who are, what I'm personally hearing is there's a good section of the population that's like, oh, generative AI, that's the big thing. Everything can be solved by generative AI through a dialogue, And I'm like, hey, that's one category of AI. There's techniques and tools that have existed for a long time that help build generative AI solutions. But individually, many of those techniques and categories of artificial intelligence are still very applicable. And I think we have yet to really see the benefit of many of them. And those are the things that we still need to focus on and will focus on as a team, from my perspective. And in addition to recognizing the value that the generative AI space brings, which I think is going to be the big enabler for most people in terms of education and training and making themselves valuable in a sense.
Do you have an example? Do you have an example from the work that you do? We don't want to share any secrets or anything of how ADM is actually using AI and machine learning and getting some scientific insights.
This will actually go back to your original question around data. So my team has been directly involved with our science and technology group. Those are the folks, the scientists who come up with new formulas, ingredients, and flavors and tastes and whatnot. And the microbiome, for example. I think we have one of the largest microbiome knowledge bases in the world. I think it's located over in Europe someplace. The company bought another company that specialized in that space. But I think much of that data, that knowledge is dark, meaning that nobody's really had the time to look at it or apply the kind of tools and techniques that we have. And my team's been actively engaged in that for a number of years now, with the limited amount of capacity that we have and the investments that we have from an AI perspective. But we have a roadmap and we have a pathway of understanding that the microbiome is very important to the kinds of products that the company produces. If we're producing probiotics, prebiotics, postbiotics, for consumption, how is that really affecting the microbiome when we get it into different parts of the intestine? Is it really how does that really affect health? How can you measure that?
Right.
At that level. So there are lots of ideas, just for the amount of ideas that are being generated of how we can look at this stuff, the actual capacity that we have in terms of resources, people, and priorities and whatnot, it's very limited. So it's almost like we need more. We want more because the space is exploding. And I think a lot of companies outside of our own are looking at this too. And we're going to see a tremendous amount of growth in this field of new products, new ideas, and new realizations of how health is determined by your microbiome. And that's in the human element. But there's microbiomes everywhere, and you even spoke to it, even in the soil. There's a microbiome. There's even in the forests, in the rainforests, in the deserts, everywhere, in the oceans. It's all a giant living entity in a sense, and how it relates to each other. And what, I guess, if we want to take a step back about how humans have been, I guess the position would be destroying this microbiome various microbiomes over the last 100 years with the food that we eat, the kind of drugs that we take. I've seen news reports that the human microbiome is being devastated. Things are, I don't quite understand what that means myself, but I've got team members who are looking into it. But to your point, even with the farmland, why are we using such, fertilizers and whatnot that are actually depleting the soil, but we think it's producing crops in such a way that's beneficial? But no, maybe we were actually destroying the very thing that would have supported a very good farm, sustainable, practice. We're destroying the microbiome.
So my
without
question.
having the
Okay. So I have another question. I'm sorry to jump in. I wanted to kind of, as a person leading this AI group at ADM, and you mentioned that the demand for people wanting to do AI things is outstripping the capacity to do it as for everything. How, in a leadership role, do you choose where to work? Because you could work everywhere and get yourself so spread thin that you'd have no impact, or you could be too focused and hurt the company because you're going too deep. How do you strike that kind of just right level of balance?
It's the same process that's always been used for all new technologies since the Industrial Revolution. Prioritization. What's the criteria that you look at? Is how you prioritize what you're looking at. Is it just the whim of a senior person, which seems very often at times, or not within our company?
Of course.
Or is it something that's actually qualitative or quantitatively measured to say, this is how we look at the criteria? We look at the market, what's most profitable, what's our anticipated, return on the investment, all those things. But at times you can go through paralysis by analysis and never get anywhere. So somebody just needs to make a decision. Is it the right decision? Well, I guess that's for the historians to figure out.
Right.
So it's one of those things where no model is perfect or no model is right, but every model, is useful.
Right.
So, yeah, I look at it as a combination of all sorts of different things of what am I really interested in personally? What's valuable for the company? What's valuable for the resources that are going to be working on it? Because if the people that are going to be working on it are actually interested in it, it's more likely going to be successful. Right. So I look at across that whole spectrum is the people.
Right.
That's such a management. It doesn't matter if you've got really good methodologies or governance structures or processes or policies enacted. I've seen fantastic methodologies and people, saying this is the way to do things, and we're following an agile process, or we're doing Scrum, or something else that the latest vendors have come in saying this will solve all your problems. But it comes down to the people, because the people can either destroy a wonderful process or methodology, or they can overcome terrible processes and methodologies and come up with great results. So, to really answer your question, it's the same techniques people have been using since the dawn of the industrial prioritization.
Right. So as you started this journey in AI and machine learning, what would you think some of the biggest challenges you saw and had to overcome or still are facing these days? What are the struggles that every company who's doing AI and machine learning at scale is going to run up against?
I guess in a funny way, it's the people. If you got rid of the people,
so tell me a little bit more about that.
It's complicated in a sense of there's so many opportunities, and I think the opportunities really are reflective of humanity in general, recognizing that this is the big enabler. This is either, and you mentioned it earlier, this can either go in the direction of destruction, which many loud, top voices are talking about, or it can be the great enabler of, bringing humanity to that next level of evolution, whatever that might be.
Right.
So it's a whole spectrum in there. And I'm not really sure how to answer that one. I guess I could just speculate on things. But.
Well, I mean, Jean Ross in her book Designed for Digital talks about for these kinds of initiatives to work well, there has to be alignment with technology, processes, and people. When those things seem to be in line and in balance, all kinds of good things can happen. But from my experience talking to executives in the industry, we've put a lot of effort into the area of technology because it's relatively easy to work with, processes, which are relatively easy. The people part you touched on, I think is right. I mean, we have to bring the people along with us, and it may require upskilling and reskilling and really thinking about where they're going to be excited about the work that they're doing, and if they don't have the skills, how do we get them the skills? Because, God knows we don't, like you said, we have a insatiable need for people with all these backgrounds and a limited supply.
Yeah. Focusing on the people, I think that's also how I built my team, is I look at academic credentials. Do they have the chops to do some of the hard math? Okay, that's fine. But there's a characteristic of people who are really going to go far in this field, and do they have an insatiable curiosity? How can you actually measure that? How can you talk with somebody and understand, are they a really curious person? And the technique that I use when I speak with them is I ask them, what did you learn today? What did you learn yesterday? Tell me, it doesn't have to be work related. And as they describe, what they learned, you can see how deep they go. And if they're answering a question, well, I learned this, I learned how to do fishing, but on fishing, lures, whatever, or something, lures, or whatever topic it is, people that are innately curious about the world go really deep in their explanation. And that's very telling of a person who is a problem solver.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a technique that I use, because if I go in and say, okay, you got the academic credentials, but there's many people who can go through school who are academically inclined, but they just aren't curious people. They just follow the patterns and whatever, and they could, make their way through. But in order to really advance this space and have a very good, strong, cohesive team of people that aren't focused on the politics and all the other issues, but are really focused on, wow, this is a problem I want to solve. You want curious people who can bring the academic background, but are curious in the sense of they want to be creative and they want to use their imagination and they want to learn and do something. And finding those people, which they exist all over the place, you enable them and bring them together, and you have a winning team. That way, if you focus on those characters or those attributes of those kinds of people, and you find them in the industry, you can make magic. Magic will happen. And then the rest of society will benefit from those things that are being developed.
Yeah, we've hired people across the spectrum, high school graduates all the way up to PhDs, and put them all together. And I would agree with you that the common characteristics of the successful people we hire are naturally curious.
Yeah.
And they're curious about solving problems. They're curious about finding solutions. They're curious about it all. So that's an interesting perspective. But I want to kind of wrap up getting your view of, we touched on generative AI. Where do we go from here, and what do you see us doing in the future with generative AI, and how do you think generative AI is going to impact specifically your business?
On the surface level, and I've seen some of the statistics that are coming about on this, or the research, is that it will enable people across the company to be more productive, in a sense of they're going to be able to articulate their thoughts more in a cohesive manner by using these tools. Because people who many people can recognize good writing, good ideas, good thoughts, but they have a difficult time constructing that stuff. Generative AI can construct it for you, and you can recognize, well, that's exactly what I wanted to say. That's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm trying to, report out or communicate. And it'll help them to generate more of that kind of information. And they themselves then therefore become more productive in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes, they're using these tools to lift themselves up. And the statistics I was referring to is they're saying, well, it's going to eliminate a lot of jobs. The very low end people are going to, we won't need them anymore. But what they found, I think it was a 5,000 person company. MIT just did this study, came out a few weeks ago. They found that the lowest level employees actually were elevated up to, the mid-level employees in terms of their productivity and customer service. But the mid-level employees only gained a little bit. But so it really brought even the lowest level people up further than they thought would happen, which was enlightening, because then it was like, well, you don't need to eliminate the lowest level employees, because they're the ones who are going to benefit a lot from this kind of technology. Which was,
if you stop and think about that for a second, Jarrod, if you are elevating them and making them more productive just as is, then you're making your whole company more productive, because if they get the biggest bump in productivity, then that's really significant, because there's significantly more of them than there are the higher level employees, and making them more productive only makes the whole industry more productive. Yes, there will be some jobs that are lost, and there will be people who will need upskilling and reskilling. I mean, my research is saying that probably within the next 5 to 10 years, your academic background will only last 5 to 10 years. So organizations are going to have to start really integrating upskilling and reskilling into the job itself. For instance, like Google gives time for doing innovative work. We may have to be thinking as leaders, how do we incorporate and integrate and mesh work with learning so that they are kind of brought together into something that's sustainable for their staff over time. Anyway, listen,
you might like this one.
Yeah, good. Tell me.
On the education piece with these tools, we are beginning to see how these, like ChatGPT, is being used in education, not just to write papers, but actually to teach, in a sense of you're interacting with something that can, and I believe, Stan, you worked on this yourself.
Yes, I have.
It will speed up the ability for people to learn new subjects and new ideas, new concepts, much more quicker than historical processes. We can teach these machines to use different techniques that are more applicable to certain individuals. Some people want to learn this way. Some people want to learn this way. Their uptake will be more helped by these different, very unique, personalized services. And so your ability to learn a new skill will rapidly, the time committed to learn a new skill will be condensed, and that will make you more productive. And then as new things come on, new jobs, you can go from job to job. Your ability to learn is going to be enhanced tremendously. So there was a point I liked on this one too. I was on a panel about a month ago, and there was a lady who was handling all the refugees out of Jordan and the refugee camps out there. There's like 100,000 refugees, and they brought the internet to these folks, and there were so many of them that this is a new thing to them. And they wanted, and there's a yearning at the human level, yearning of wanting to learn, many of these people. And now it was being brought to them in such a way. And generative AI, essentially doing it in a kind of techniques, their own language, their own speed. So most, you're probably going to find the next Einstein in a group like that, You don't know, but it opens the doors. And if we find the next Einstein anywhere on the planet, hey, or whoever else, we're going to find more and more of these kinds of people that are going to help humanity.
Well, I think that. Well, that's great, and thanks for mentioning my actual work with GPT. I'm actually going to release my first blog post on what a Socratic teacher could look like using ChatGPT. So I'll make sure I send you the link. Anyway, Jarrod, listen, I thank you so much for sitting down with me and kind of chatting and give us a little insight into the ag bio business. And it's an area that not many people really well understand, but it's as complicated and complex as any pharmaceutical company that we deal with. So I just wanted our audience to have a chance to hear it from the horse's mouth, as we say. So thank you very much for being a guest today, and I appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure.